What's going on, guys? This is Ethan from The Right to Rome, and welcome. This is episode number 1 of my journey through The 4-Hour Chef. If you've never heard of The 4-Hour Chef, it's kind of a unique cookbook. It's the most recent book by Tim Ferriss, and the goal is to be able to take you from non-cook to skilled cook in the course of about 4 hours worth of kitchen prep time. And the book actually does a lot more than that. In fact, there's sections on hunting and butchering game and like scientific experiments that you take Nutella and turn it into a powdered dessert topping. And there's a ton in the book. But the very basic section, which is maybe about 20% of the book, is designed to kind of bring you up to speed in the kitchen in the course of 4 hours. So there's a lot of cool stuff in there. I've been wanting to cook my way through it for a long time. I've been wanting to learn to cook for a long time. So that's what I'm going to be doing through these videos. Feel free to follow along. I've done cooking videos like this before a couple of times. This one is a little bit unique. First of all, because it's part of the 4-Hour Chef series that I'm starting. And secondly, because I'm cooking in an Airbnb kitchen. This is the kitchen. Actually, this is one of 2 kitchens in this Airbnb host's house. This is the one that guests can use if they have something to put in the oven. And the recipe today is going in the oven. So, what are we making? In the background, you might be able to hear Don't Sweat the Technique by Eric B. and Rakim. It's very like 90s hip-hop. That's one of the unique things about the book. It's every recipe's got a music pairing and a tea pairing rather than like a wine. So it's pretty cool. You should definitely check it out. I'll link to the book in the description of this video. Anyways, what are we making? We are going to make ossobuco. And I use the air quotes because Tim Ferriss uses quotes in the actual book. And the reason is this recipe isn't traditional ossobuco. I did a little poking around on Wikipedia before I hit roll here and figured out that there are 2 well-known recipes for ossobuco. Traditionally, the meal is cooked veal shank, and the name comes from the Italian for bone hole or hole in bone. And what it is you've got like a piece of meat with the bone in it, and then it's cross-cut so that you can actually stick your finger into the hole of the bone. The marrow's exposed, and that's the important part. Gives a lot of flavor while it's cooking. So ossobuco is traditionally cross-cut veal shanks, braised or cooked for a long time. That's kind of what braising is. Cooked for a long time in liquid, in like a wine and cinnamon bay leaf mixture. Then there's a more modern version that's got tomatoes in it. Then there's Tim Ferriss's version, which is cooked using lamb shanks instead of veal. And it's got tomatoes, it's got carrots, a little garlic, but it's very basic, super basic. And the reason this is the first recipe in the book is that it's designed to get you a really quick win really fast. This is a delicious meal. I've cooked it once before. I had tried to cook my way through the book in the past, and just kind of life got in the way. But it's a delicious meal, and it takes like 5 minutes to prep, and when you pull it out of the oven, people think you're a fantastic cook. So it's designed to get you rolling really fast. Couple of things before we get going. So I'm gonna kind of banter back and forth with you as I'm prepping this. It shouldn't take much more than about 5 minutes, although I've got some kind of a talker, so we'll see. All right, first things first. I am using the Kindle version of this book. By the way, if you have to choose between the Kindle version and the printed version, get the printed version. It's a really beautifully put together book. I mean, it's just a lot of fun to look through. But I'm on the road right now. I've been traveling for about 3 months and will be traveling for the foreseeable future. And for some reason, I had a really hard time finding a copy of it over here. I'm in England. So the Kindle book is the next best bet. And the Kindle book looks nice too, but it's not quite as nice as the printed book for obvious reasons. It's hard to predict the size of the screen, so sometimes the recipe gets split between different pages and stuff like that. Anyways, if you can, get the printed book. Otherwise, I'm using the Kindle book. So let's see what the first step is. All right. A couple of things to introduce real quick before we get started. This is what we'll be cooking in. This is, actually, you know what? I'm going to use this one. One of the cool things about learning to cook while you're traveling is that you got to be adaptive. So I can't haul a bunch of shit around with me. I need to be able to cook with what's in my host's kitchen. And that can make you a much more skilled chef because you learn to rely more on technique than a bunch of gadgets. Or at least kind of that's my hope. But this kitchen is pretty cool because the owner of it is a Cordon Bleu trained cook. And she's got a ton of really cool stuff, including a bunch of these enamel-coated Dutch ovens. Now, this was the first thing that I bought when I got my first apartment. It was the only thing I could cook in for a long time. And I did everything from, I baked bread in them, I roasted chickens in them, I made soups in them. It's a really cool multi-use little tool. So if you have to buy one thing for your kitchen, I think they suggested in the 4-Hour Chef, I certainly recommend that it be an enamel-coated Dutch oven. This is what we're going to be cooking in, and the recipe goes really fast. I'm just going to do a couple of the steps from over here. By the way, guys, I welcome constructive criticism. So if you've got any ideas for making this better, if anybody's shot kind of these mobile cooking shows before, any equipment that can make the sound better or make filming easier, please let me know. You can find me at Ethan D. Brooks on Twitter, or you can get me through the website. Comment on therighttorome.com, and I read all those, so I'll be able to find it there. All right, first step. We got carrots, and these actually came pre-scrubbed, which is about the only benefit of buying carrots from Asda. I really wanted to buy sort of some local vegetable stand stuff, but the problem is I'm in a very small town called St. Leonards-on-Sea, which is in the south coast of England. And one thing I'm still getting used to is that everything closes early and practically nothing's open on Sundays. So I had shopped for this yesterday. The only thing that was open was Asda, which is the sort of the English imprint of Walmart. So the carrots came pre-scrubbed, but they were also from, like a giant corporation. So little give and take, I guess. All we're doing is chopping the ends off these carrots. So there's no end on them. And then the goal is to just break them in half, loosely. Or it says, roughly break by hand into halves. And then they're going to go into this Dutch oven on the very bottom. And what they do is they provide a sort of bed for the meat to sit on. Next step. Preheat the oven to 350 degrees. That's roughly 180 degrees Celsius. And he's got the conversion there in the book. Another interesting thing about learning to cook while you're traveling is that you find different appliances. So all the ovens over here, they're all measured in Celsius. And still getting used to that too. So, like I said, it's about 180 degrees Celsius. So, just go ahead and do that. Make sure there's nothing in there. Alright, Oven's preheating. Next step. Put the 4 lamb shanks in here. So again, this meat, I was gonna buy it from the local butcher, but I can never seem to catch the local butcher when they're open. These are just lamb shanks. But as I said, this recipe is traditionally cooked with veal shanks. Veal is very young cow, in case you don't know. But based on what I've read, it will actually work with just about any meat as long as there's a bone that's been cross-cut in it. So one of the things Tim Ferriss says is that you could even use turkey drumsticks and have your butcher saw them in half, or if you've got like a really big knife, you could do it yourself. Just be careful. I also saw some braising steaks at the store, which are like cuts of meat that are about an inch thick with the bone left in. You know, so if you're more of a beef person, those are available. Frankly, I'm not a huge fan of lamb. I find it very rich. Let's see if I can tilt you up a little bit here. I find lamb to be very rich. I'm not a huge fan of it, but for the sake of following the book step by step, chosen to eat it. Generally speaking, though, when it comes to cooking, my advice is adapt the recipe the way you want it. You know, it's your food. You got to eat it. So don't eat anything you don't like. All right. Aha, the tomatoes. Next step is the tomato. Okay. So, a couple of things about this. Tim Ferriss is all about simplicity. I think I hear my host coming. So this is a pull tab can, so that you don't need to dirty a can opener. And it's just got whole tomatoes inside. And all you got to do is pull the tomato out. Let me see if I can reposition this so that you can see a little bit. That's a whole tomato. The goal is to squish these and then just drop them in to the pot. Stick your thumb through them first before you squish it. Otherwise, it will explode and you'll get tomato juice all over yourself. If you're not going to do that, at least wear somebody else's clothes or clothes you hate. So, I'm just going to squish these. And just kind of spread them in the pot. Hey, Keith. I'm just shooting a video right now.
You're doing what with the video?
I'm shooting a video of cooking for the internet, so don't say anything you don't want to be held to in public.
Okay, I won't say anything.
How's things going?
Better than they were when I last saw you.
Good.
The engineers haven't turned up then?
No, not yet.
Right.
Everybody, I don't know if you can see him. That's Keith. He's
Hi.
the master of the house.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so the next step, after you've mixed the tomatoes in, is garlic. You can use one of two things. You can either use powdered garlic, in which case you just sprinkle it right into the bowl, or you can use fresh garlic, which is what we're going to do. Now, for those of you kids who've never seen it, that's what garlic looks like when it comes out of the ground. And this is a garlic press. Now, I mentioned this earlier, which is that when you're on the road, you need to be adaptive. And so ideally, if you learn really good knife skills, you don't need things like garlic press because you can mince by hand. This just makes it faster, and it just so happens that the hosts had one in the kitchen, so I decided to use it. But you may not always be able to find one of these if you're traveling. So, you know, learn how to mince by hand. Now these are kind of cool. All you do is just throw a single clove of garlic into that basket, and then you press down, and it presses the garlic through. And we want about 5 cloves of garlic. And you can just pull the skins out afterwards. So you don't have to peel the garlic, just force it straight through the press. This is actually the first time I've ever used garlic press. Usually I chop garlic by hand, but I kind of like it. Smells really good. The next thing we're going to add after this is the wine. Now, in the book, he suggests anything dry, like an Italian white table wine. And then he lists Trebbiano as a suggestion. This is interesting, though. When I first read the book, I did not know that Trebbiano was a wine varietal. I had no idea what he was talking about. So I actually reached out to, I believe her name was Madeline Puquette. Yes, Madeline Puquette. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right, Madeline. She runs Wine Folly. You can find her on Twitter at Wine Folly. Great website. Very instructive about all things wine. If you're not a super wine connoisseur like me, or if, like me, you're not a wine connoisseur. Great information there. She suggested something similar. She said, what did she suggest? New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, or Trebbiano, which apparently you can find under the name Ugni Blanc. It's Ugniblank. Here's the thing. Trebbiano, also known as Ugni Blanc, is one of the most popular grapes grown in Italy and France. It's in tons of wine. However, it doesn't have like a shining reputation, so it's difficult to find. Usually it's either mixed into blends or it's distilled down into, what was it called? Brandy. Distilled down into brandy. So, on the off chance that you cannot find a Trebbiano, there are other wines that will do the trick. If you're wondering what it takes for a wine to be dry, that is the percentage of sugar that's left over by volume after the fermentation process. So, if you have a wine that's got less than 1% sugar left over, it's considered dry. That's 4 grams per liter. If you're at 12 grams per liter, it's considered medium dry. Both of those should work just fine for this recipe. Couple of suggestions. Dry: Sauvignon Blanc, Albarino, Chardonnay, and Muscadet. Those are all dries. So if you can find any of those, you're good to go. Medium dry: Pinot Grigio, like the one we're going to use, Pinot Blanc, and Riesling. Those are all medium dry. So, play with it. Let me know what the results are for your experiment. Oh, it's already been 20 minutes. And just kind of have fun with it. That's a little bit of information about the wine now. So we've just done the garlic. Next thing we're going to do is just drizzle a little olive oil in there. This is extra virgin olive oil. Nothing special, just picked it up. And now for the wine. Another interesting thing about this, I don't know if you can see the label. It's a Pinot Grigio, but it's a product of Chile. Chile. The reason that's unique is that Chile is one of the only places on Earth that was spared the phylloxera bug. So, back when steamships first started coming back from the United States, botanists brought back samples of the wine vines that had grown in America. Unwittingly, they brought back this little tiny bug called phylloxera, and it just ran rampant through European vineyards. In fact, it's estimated that somewhere between 2/3 and 9/10 of European vineyards were wiped out because of this bug. Nothing could resist the phylloxera except American vines. And so what they ended up doing was grafting American roots onto most of the remaining European vines. That's where a lot of European wine comes from today. So Chilean wine, for some reason, phylloxera couldn't get to Chile. They've got the Pacific Ocean to the west, the Andes to the east, the Atacama Desert to the north. The bug just could never travel through. So if you buy wine from Chile, you're actually getting it from roots that have not been grafted with American roots, usually. Of course, Chile is South American, so I guess they are technically American, but you know what I mean. Almost everywhere else, what you're getting is a European vine that's growing on American roots. There are some pockets in Europe that for some reason weren't affected. Sandy soils, super dry climates. Phylloxera doesn't seem to like those. There's one place that I thought was worth mentioning, and it's called Quinta do Noval, which is in the Douro Valley in Portugal. For some reason, their vines were totally spared phylloxera, and scientists cannot figure it out. So we want to add enough wine to cover these lamb shanks 1/2 to 3/4 of the way, which is going to be most of the bottle, because my damn carrots are too thick. Raise the meat way up out of it. Generally, I try to save some wine for the cook. Well, I got a little bit. Always save some for the cook. Alright, after that, it's just a couple cranks of salt and pepper, and then this thing goes in the oven. That's salt. And that's pepper. Alright, guys. Throw a lid on this. It goes in the oven for 2 hours. And that's it. That's as simple as it is. Now, was it 5 minutes? If I wasn't jibber-jabbering on, I think it probably would have been. The garlic press slows things down a little bit. But besides that, I mean, you're just snapping carrots, throwing meat in the pan, squishing tomatoes, drizzle with olive oil, pour some wine in. That's it. A little garlic, salt, pepper. It doesn't take long. Goes right in the oven. Like I said, 2 hours at 350 or 180 if you're in the UK or Europe. And that's it. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this. Any suggestions, please, like I said, hit me up at Ethan D. Brooks on Twitter. You can find me at therighttorome.com as well. That's WRITEWRITETOROAM.com. Until next time, take care.